Welcome everybody back to the DomCast, episode 18. I am here with my co-host, the storyteller, who is not in a car this weekend. So I think this will work out a little bit better. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm doing good. And hopefully people don't have to comment about my audio issues anymore.
Yeah,
Saying that I had inferior audio to Dom. I mean, who doesn't have inferior audio to Dom? Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know if I'm using the video version of this or if there'll be game in the background, but the setup looks nice today. He's got his actual like video, the same quality that he uses in his videos. He's got that now. The mic sounds crisp. It's got a little decoration in the background now of you said that's like the basket dimensions, the dimension of a basketball goal. Yeah, it's a fire setup today. I'll have to see how this turns out, and maybe I'll use this. But either way, we have had an interesting week. It was definitely fast forwarded. Before I get into that, also because a lot went down this week in the NBA. Also, if you listen to this podcast on Spotify or iTunes, you probably realize that there were issues. It's back there now, so the links work. The links on all the videos should work. If I get to that before now, I was moving networks. We are part of the Blue Wire podcast network at the moment, so just had to have some moves. That's all. I didn't delete anything. All right, so those notes aside,
is that who you're with now?
Yeah, that's who we're with now. Yeah.
Who were you with?
I was with myself. I was not a part of a network. Yeah, there was no network at all. Yeah, so hopefully as the world opens back up and whatnot, there'll be like networking opportunities and everything. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Well, yeah, this week we had the trade deadline and there was a lot of news. Everything was moving very fast. I think more teams, I think they said 23 teams made a trade deadline deal. I made barbershop talks about it and I kind of went through my thoughts on most of the moves. And then more things happened. The buyout market happened. LaMarcus Aldridge, Brooklyn Net, Andre Drummond, Los Angeles Laker. So a lot of fun things, but I've given a good bit of my thoughts. Of course, I'm going to chime in on some, but was there anything that stuck out to you for the trade deadline or anything that you cared about? Or were you following it closely? How was your trade deadline experience? Because
we talked a lot. We were a little prophetic. We were definitely predicting the future. I mean, there was a lot of things that we've talked about on this podcast that didn't boil to reality until after the fact.
Yeah. No, I was preoccupied with the eras of Spotify and iTunes. Then I didn't get to mention, last week's podcast is if you go back and if you listen to it initially and you went through this week, you realize like a lot of things happened. We put a lot out into the universe that just kind of came full circle within 72 hours. We talked about for no reason at all on this particular Sunday while you were in your car. We start talking about Draymond Green and Tony Allen, like specifically. And they get into a Twitter beef 24 hours later. Oh, that was amazing. We talked all about LaMarcus Aldridge. I guess that one was due. We knew he was signing somewhere. We just didn't know exactly where that happened. I'm probably missing one more that was like eerie. Did I write it down? There was like something else eerie that happened here, and I don't know. It's probably slipping my mind right now. Steve Kerr. There we go. We talked a lot about Steve Kerr, and then his interview comes out about them having more fun without Kevin. In the sinking season than they did in Kevin Durant's last season. Like all of that was bundled into that little hour. Basically, that was like the prequel. That podcast was the prequel to this week, and so that'd be great. I feel like this podcast would blow up much quicker if we could just have a podcast every Sunday that precedes the events of the week. That'd be amazing. So yeah, wherever you want to take it, if they're trade thoughts or you can go kind of wherever you want, to be honest, because we've all talked about trades a lot by now.
I just really want to talk about LaMarcus Aldridge. That's
awesome.
Really what I want to talk about.
Yeah, new Brooklyn Net LaMarcus Aldridge, ladies and gents. That set Twitter on fire over the last day or so.
When somebody goes through a traumatic event or something that is just kind of beats them down and takes a lot of their will away, you always wonder how long it takes them to reset into like the petty human that they were before they had feelings and realized everything's not about them. LaMarcus Aldridge, do you remember before he left Portland, it was, there's a lot of talk about him versus Dame and who should be on a poster or something like that, like a billboard. And I mean, that's obviously something that is based in truth, but even if it is perfectly true that he wanted to be on a billboard that Dame was on, it's still just one fraction of whatever the whole story was. But when he goes to San Antonio, effectively he gets to live his nightmare, because I'm positive that he wasn't on any billboards in that stretch of time either, or his profile didn't expand in the least. So now he's released. I wonder how long until he reverts back to the LaMarcus he was, or it's like the blip, right? Will he just go back to his old ways, as if not just performance on the court, but just his attitude and his perspective on him in the league? Will that happen, or is he beaten down so much that he realizes he basically just needs to do three things, not mess up, and maybe sometimes he won't even start? I mean, is he supposed to start? Is he?
Yeah, no. The LaMarcus Aldridge will not be starting for the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know exactly. They're going to be using him a lot at center, they say, but I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. I think they're going to be limited minutes. I think it's going to be a limited role, like you were just kind of saying. He needs to do a couple of things. Him and Blake Griffin on this team need to do a couple of things, which is why I think they both chose there. I tweeted out with Blake Griffin before he went there. I was like, if I was Blake Griffin at this stage of my career, I'd go to the Nets. LaMarcus Aldridge, I felt the same way, but I had been hearing Miami so much that I had basically imagined his jersey being printed there already, kind of like Oladipo's from all that time, kind of like Drummond with the Lakers. Both of those were, effectively printed. I felt that way about LaMarcus, but hey, San Antonio, he was supposed to go there. That was supposed to be the next great piece. That's where championships were supposed to happen with him and Kawhi. It did not happen, and so now he goes to the Nets, and it will probably happen. And he doesn't have to do much for that. I think it's great. But I'll let you continue, because that kind of takes my mind to a different place.
Where's that?
Well, just that, like you said, you were gone a lot of the weekend, and it's actually, you do something that's very healthy. You don't seem to surf Twitter that much, and so
do it in chunks.
Yeah,
and then I stay away from it.
Yeah, you do it in manageable pieces, because if you just scroll it and you continue to scroll and you go down rabbit holes, it's like you see the same arguments made over and over and over again. You see the same narrative spun over and over. And at a certain point, you just kind of have to realize that's going to happen no matter how many times you make a video about it, no matter how many times you answer it or correct it, it's going to happen. But it's fascinating because LaMarcus Aldridge, what is he, 35, 36-year-old now? Not even close to his all-star form anymore. He created like a great rift this weekend in NBA Twitter by signing, because he's a name, just like Blake Griffin was a name. LaMarcus Aldridge is a name. Now I'm on the side of, I think this is good, because while he doesn't answer questions for the Nets, there are only questions left for defense for them, so he doesn't really answer questions for them. But when you are a vet that does this, because this is not the first time we've seen this, right? We've seen past veteran all-stars go to, I guess, super teams basically. We've seen this happen. When you're a player like that, you only need to do a couple of things. You only need to bring a couple of things to make that team that much better. And so Blake, if he draws a double team every now and then, or he forces some kind of help while he's on a court with either Kyrie or Harden, or KD and Harden, or just two of those three, that's fine. That's all he needs to do, and that helps. Same exact thing with LaMarcus Aldridge. But so that's how I think he makes them better. But the divide this weekend is either it's his corpse and he's going to see DNP games, or it's this super team and Kevin Durant has once again ruined basketball, and all of this to beat a 36-year-old LeBron. So you can kind of see just off those two, there's a wide spectrum in those two directions of the arguments that are made. But it just, and that kind of goes into the Kevin Durant Twitter thing we were talking about at the beginning, because that also, when I woke up this morning, I saw an interesting interaction there. Yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of I don't know. It's just been an interesting weekend. You had people making entire threads on a beautiful Sunday afternoon about the origins of super teams and how it was the Celtics that really started them and not LeBron. But then people are like, oh wait, super teams happened before the Celtics, and it just goes a million different places. I'm trying to decide which question I want to ask you based off of that. But yeah, go ahead.
You said a lot of things, and it was you just speak, and instantly I'm finding new little bubbles of thought.
Well, that's the goal.
Within that. So I think formal questions, it just kind of happens.
Right.
Your questions are always there. But LaMarcus Aldridge, I think we're getting to a point where I think this is a goal of mine. I have no effect over any of this, but it's something I've always wanted to happen. For players who are getting older, before they hit their their maximum, their peak, and they're on the downhill, and they're just hanging on. Before they get there, when they have 1 or 2 years left of productivity close to what they're known for doing, I think more of those players need to accept the idea of being a sixth man. And this is how you create real super teams. When a player who should be a starter understands that they need to be a sixth man, and that's all you need. I mean, honestly, I think if Russell Westbrook understood he could be a sixth man today, or maybe last year, I think that extends his career. I feel like it gives him a better chance because winning everything.
I just want to interrupt and put this small little note in there that you were talking about your mentions and how you see a surge. You've mentioned Russell Westbrook and the idea of him becoming a six man. So expect your mentions or somewhere in some form to be blown up. But continue.
It's like, once a player realizes it ain't gonna happen for them in their current situation on their team, I just want that pioneer, that person to come out and say, okay, I can do this. I can join a decent team, and I want to be the sixth man. I don't understand the cramming of all the notable players or players with egos into the starting lineup. When starting lineups are how long do starting lineups actually stay in the game? You start a game 4 or 5 minutes in, maybe 3, 4 before the first substitution, probably some older center or somebody who's just, needs to get a rest. Mm-hmm. You're already swapping new people in there. It's already ceremonial, this whole idea of starting. That's another reason why I was never bought in all on how genius Steve Kerr was by asking Andre Iguodala to come off the bench. Like, I don't think that was that brilliant of him. It seemed we had a choice. A few years before that, they were trying to decide, believe it or not, whether Klay Thompson or Harrison Barnes were going to remain in the starting lineup. And then with Andre Iguodala, they figured out he should come off the bench. And that was something that blew people's minds, I guess. And some people still credit the adjustments they made with Andre Iguodala in the 2016 or 2015, their first championship. Mm-hmm. That was a big game changer. It's fine. I get it. And we all want to boil things down to something very simple and say, that's the reason that player or that team won. And the concept of just changing things up, I get it. But if we want to see the next layer of supreme basketball, elite, the peak that it could be, we're already getting the best of the world's talent. And we've talked about this, but this is the first time that we're actually getting the best of the entire world, not just the best of, what we keep our eye on in the United States and 3 other countries that we have a pipeline to. No, we're getting the best of the world finally. So we have to, the game has changed. The game has changed significantly. I'm waiting for that one player who was the man on one team to understand, to get a championship. And there's a whole level of this. I mean, I don't want to say it, but would there be a better sixth man in the world than Damian Lillard? I know it's not happening.
Shit.
But two years from now, when he really realizes it's not going to happen, that's when, I don't know, he joins whoever it is as a sixth man, goes to Miami, and it doesn't mean that you have to be worse than all the starters. It's just strategic. Like, that's what I don't understand. It's strategic. So I used to hang my hat on Russell Westbrook making that decision. Because you remember the battle that Carmelo Anthony had, realizing that he may not be a starter.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Remember the other one? Dwayne Wade? He did not want to come off the bench in those elderly years. Some of the worst years where he just looked like he didn't even want to be out there. But he realized eventually, and I think there was some in-depth reporting about it. He's got to come off the bench. And I don't even know what team it was. The idea is that if he would have done that just a few years earlier, it could have been the help that a team needed to get over the hump. I'm waiting for that. That's one of my NBA dreams. Damian Lillard, I give you 3 more years. 3 more years of, like punching at clouds. And then, come on, join the Nuggets, as a sixth man. Just something like that, and then you'll win.
In 2 straight weeks, we've had LeBron is a boring basketball player, has become boring, and Lillard needs to go eventually needs to go to the bench.
The
Now,
Nuggets,
now,
is 6 man.
I will say it's funny because I've had just a random thought. I have a lot of random thoughts. I've had a random thought of what if a superstar player just did that? What if a superstar player was like, you know what, I've got enough money, I've done enough. And they're still relatively in their prime, not like they're washed or anything. I'm just gonna go play on this great team, but I'm gonna be okay with this shrunken role. Of course, that hasn't really happened yet. Not going to happen anytime soon, probably. Now, the place that I would disagree with Damian Lillard is, at least let's see, because his problem is different to me. It's not that it's not. Well, okay. First of all, yeah, it's not gonna happen in Portland because Portland just never gets the guy that they actually need next to him. But I think Damian Lillard is I don't want to say Kevin Durant decision away. He's a modern superstar decision away from actually being able to win something, because Lillard is easily talented enough that if he decided, you know what, I'm done being loyal and a ring actually does mean something to me, I think he could have, I don't know if he could have had one already, but I think he could have, acquired the help needed to get that done. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the Iguodala thing. There we go, because we did bring that up last week, and that was part of the video. With Kurt putting him on the bench with these stars, and even with what you're talking about, I think you understand why it wouldn't happen. Ego, and like Charles Barkley said, everyone has an ego, but they have a reason to have an ego. Yeah, NBA superstars like Carmelo Anthony at the time, where he laughed at the idea of coming off the bench. It's just, I guess it's something that we wouldn't understand since we're not superstar players, but these guys
like
have
you,
been
like you and me.
Yeah.
or like everybody listening to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Has their own judgmental comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't have the same, because it probably would make sense, but for guys that have been superstars their entire lives, I guess for Melo, because I didn't understand why Melo would be laughing at a comment like that at the point of his career that he did, because it's clear that's kind of where it was going. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, wow, why is this so difficult for him? He can play, but he would clearly be better in this role. But when you've been a superstar your entire career at every level of basketball, it probably does something to you to, make that non-feasible. But this is what happens. It takes an injury, or it takes them kind of being forced into that role, and they end up
need to be forced.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the tough part.
Yeah, they have to be forced into this role, and then it turns into I'm trying to think of who the Celtics didn't really have with. Yeah, because Rasheed Wallace isn't a great example. He just got old, and he came and played for us around like 2010. Then of course Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis went to Miami after their All-Star days were clearly over.
Rashard Lewis, yes.
His were very long gone by that day. He was an All-Star anyways.
He was out of the Miami area, right, at some point, or like out of the Orlando area. Rashard Lewis at some point. Well,
he played for the Magic.
When he lost access to the goods, his career went down.
Oh, you mean you're talking about am I thinking of the right thing? What are you referencing?
Yeah, well, the 2009 Orlando Magic, they're like the ones. They're the nexus. That was the explosion of steroids in the NBA. That was it.
Oh yeah, that's new to me.
2009 Orlando, when they went to the finals. Once again, as I say over and over again, I wrote a whole thing up about this, and there's one person who was really upset that I never released it. Like they kept like trolling me all the time, or just like every address I had, every piece of social media I had, even emails, they were like, you gotta release that video. And then it started getting weird. Anyway, I never did, but the whole 2009 Orlando Magic, that's a whole special. That's a whole feature length special here.
Great. I would definitely add that.
What, Dwight and Jameer Nelson? He was wider than he was tall. Like that guy was he was all muscle. And Rashard Lewis, like all these people.
Were there two players on that team that got caught up? Like was it Hedo Turkoglu and Rashard Lewis that had, or was it just Rashard Lewis?
Yes. It was both of them.
Okay. That might explain why Hedo Turkoglu, when I saw him years later at my college playing one-on-one. I mean, of course, he was an NBA player playing a regular civilian, so that's why he destroyed him. But also, still, for like a damn near retired Hedo, he was on one. That's also, I guess, yeah. We'll get to that with the 2009 Magic. I have added that. I think I know where I was going actually, because this is perfect. We have two questions today that just mix in perfectly with where the topics have went this week after last week's podcast. Somebody a while ago, I don't know when I wrote this question down, but somebody asked, what would be your ideal career if you were a player in terms of rings and MVPs? But that's not exactly where I want to take it, because this goes kind of hand in hand with what you're talking about. Guys going to the bench if they were, still in their prime, being able to take that ego hit, or guys that have had to deal with ego or just be forced into this role. I just kind of threw this out here on Twitter yesterday, and I was asking, if you were a player, would you care about your so-called legacy? Because that's what half the arguments are about at the moment is, oh, Kevin Durant's legacy is ruined. This means nothing. The championships mean nothing. Or LeBron's legacy and all that. Like, I don't really do legacy talk anymore. I made a couple of videos like that when I first started, but it's outlived me. And of course it was here before me as well. But yeah, if you were a player, I guess you could make some of the ideal career in with it, but would you care about this so-called legacy that people spend all day fighting on Twitter about?
Well, there's two groups, right? There's players that, actually three maybe. There's players that have legacies, right? And then there's players that are associated with people who have legacies. They're integral parts of a bigger player's story. And then there's people who just might as well have never existed. Like all you got, the best they're gonna get is that they amaze people when they told them they played in the NBA like 20 years ago. Really? Wow, you our neighbor, that guy taking the trash out. He played in the NBA for 6 months. That's great. Amazing. Like on a pedestrian level, on a civilian level, you just run into somebody at the store and they're like, yeah, I played in the NBA. No context, no prompt or anything. They just say it to you. Like, wow, really? Like you'd be impressed. Then it's like, if you see Kevin Durant walking in the supermarket or store, walks up to him, people just get disrespect him. Like they're not amazed that he's in the NBA anymore. It's literally a higher, it is not literally, but it is a higher standard they're instantly judging him on. It's like, man, like this guy, was a professional basketball player. You should be amazed. We immediately go to the legacy part, how we frame that whole thing. Sitting on a keyboard here. All right. So once you realize you are in that group that could potentially have a legacy, and you're not just in the NBA to have a job or for shits and giggles, and it really matters. And I feel like that becomes almost, it's got to matter. It has to matter. These people are, especially when all of it is thrown directly back in your face and you can't escape it, whatever your recent performance is or whatever the talk is, it's inescapable. Even if these players aren't searching for it, it permeates the locker rooms. So if you cross over into that territory where you could have a legacy, I think it's impossible for them to not be constantly thinking about it at some level. Just like a low drone just in the back of their head, just legacy. It's gotta matter. But then there's a freedom to the people where it's like, you're gonna be forgotten. You're just one of the others, where it's gotta feel nice to not have the pressure of a legacy. But then there's obviously people at that level who probably think they should have a legacy. There's like that thin line, 1 or 2 time all-star players. It's like, do you think anybody's gonna talk about Mike Conley 30 years from now?
Yeah, 30 years from now, I think that might be I think that's a stretch, honestly. We love Conley around here, but yeah.
Like, I hope he owns get a bunch of Wendy's franchises and invest his money, but it's like, at that point, at a certain point, maybe not him, at a certain point, you have to start reminding people that you played in the NBA. You have to do some of that self-promotion, as opposed to just, I don't know, trying to do the best that you can. You got to get out there and promote yourself, which is a whole different problem when you're self-promoting. And I think we have something like that we're supposed to get to at some point. I don't want to go too far into that. But I think legacy is to me, I would be obsessed over it on a nightly basis if I was at that level. But I would almost beg that I wasn't, so I could just exist and and just be happy and not have the pressure of a legacy. Good grief. All right. That's it. I think that's it.
So how do you think Kevin Durant's Twitter interactions play into that, because at this point, this is where it's gone. We years ago learned, we had irrefutable evidence that KD had a burner account, as do many players. If I was an NBA player, I would absolutely have a burner account. Why would you not? Having an account with 18 million followers is probably very restrictive on some level. So KD has a burner. It got exposed, and he was kind of like, yeah, you know, I should have used better judgment. But since then, he's fully embraced his role in NBA Twitter, which is, of course, he was on the Warriors for the last few years, which angered everybody who wasn't a Warriors fan, angered everybody who wanted to see parity. And he, since moving on, he's kind of leaned into it. Like, yeah, I did that shit. I went there. I went to a team that I knew was unbeatable. I did it. I've been winning. We won 2 championships. Now I'm on the Nets, and they're probably going to keep winning. And you went there with Kyrie first. It was like this moment where we felt like everything was cool because it was him and Kyrie, and that was supposed to be the rehabilitation of his image, or quote unquote legacy that we're talking about. And then they get Harden. And again, this is my weekly everything in life is optics. After you get Harden, you get Blake Griffin, you get LaMarcus Aldridge. This looks, even if it's not, that's the part that kills me, right? Even if this has nothing to do with KD, like KD probably didn't specifically request James Harden to come to the Nets. I think the Nets GM and the ownership saw like, hey, we have a chance to put together 3 amazing players. Why don't we do that? They probably did that. I don't think Kevin Durant was day and night. I mean, yeah, that's his buddy. They probably talked about it, but I'm not sure that was exactly his doing. Just like I'm not exactly sure Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge was specifically his doing. But it looks that way from the guy who went to Golden State. It looks that way, like here he is on another super team. But he's leaned into it. Today on his latest Twitter interaction, they're just hilarious. They're hilarious because he said specifically, I should have probably brought this up, but off the dome, someone said something like, yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge plays for the Nets now, and Kevin Durant feels the need to come defend himself about it, and he needs the validation. And KD said, I pull up to these threads because I knew, I think he said I smelled blood in the water, and I needed to come fulfill the prophecy. Like, I knew you guys were going to be on here bitching about it or something like that. Like, he's literally just one of us, which I guess on some level he is. And then someone's like, oh, yeah, well, you just choose violence. You just wake up and choose violence. It sounds pretty miserable. And he just replies with one scathing, absolutely. Just, that's it. He's perfected this. Kevin Durant has perfected this era. He's taken whoever started this formula, whatever, you can argue about that all day. He's got this formula of I'm going to play with a bunch of stars and I'm going to win. He's also perfected this off-court part of I am going to be in your head 24/7 on the internet, and I'm not going to leave any mystery about it. I'm not going to be like the other star players who pretend not to read anything on social media or pretend like I don't hear it. I'm going to get in the mud with you, and this is going to be funny. It's going to be funny for one of us. And so that is KD on Twitter, and his legacy in most people's eyes is what we have right now. Super teams, stacked decks. And I'm wondering how you think his interactions on Twitter kind of play into this, since he exists in that sphere of he has a legacy, regardless whether he wants it or not. He has that, and it's been a thing over the last couple of years. It's been probably the hottest discussion for like the last 4 or 5 years.
I mean, I love it. I love him being just a person, and this kind of narrows me into a conversation that I have a lot about the way LeBron James interacts and speaks in public or speaks to the media. You get these players like Kevin Durant, and I bring up DeMarcus Cousins occasionally. They don't talk to the media. They don't talk to the people around basketball in the same cadence of basketball talk. They just talk like people. They just speak like a human would. I thought it was really funny if you watched the All-Star draft, this past one. And it was LeBron James and Kevin Durant and the TNT folks. And you realize there's a lot of not just like fake laughter, but polite laughter. Everything's not hilarious, but people act like everything is hilarious. And that's what you do when you're on TV. You turn it up. I talk about this with my wife a lot on TV in like morning news shows. They want to be jovial and fun. There's always somebody on the set who is like a laugher, and it doesn't matter what somebody says, they are constantly laughing. And it's the job. It is a job. You have to have one of those people. You can't have everybody trying to drop some dumb, dry jokes. You got to have somebody there to laugh and just say, yeah. So you can see it. You can almost see it in that situation where the TNT guys were in their TV personas. You know, everybody's more low key as soon as they get out of the studio. The lights are off. LeBron James was doing his typical thing, you know, kind of truncated sentences, a lot of cliches, and a lot of rhythm. Here's where the joke is. Here's where I say something. And no matter what I say next, this is a punchline. We're all going to laugh about it, right? Kevin Durant he wasn't doing any of that. He kind of just sat back there like I was watching it. Just like, had his back, leaning back. Looked like he was leaning on some bed. And I think he laughed a couple times with the whole Utah stuff, which was hilarious because I felt like we actually got a little piece of LeBron James there for a second.
Yeah.
But he sat there just quiet mostly, and then he said some things when he should, but it felt like what a human conversation typically is. And that's what just freaks everybody out, is when people talk to the masses like they're just talking to somebody in their room and being honest with how they really feel about things. And it's like he's conditioned us. At first, people with voices thought it was weird. They thought he was an idiot and he was too emotional. And he's just beaten us down to the point where we just accept that is that. I mean, that's him. And it's now one of the available personas you can have as a professional athlete. You don't have to just do the sound bites. You know, a team go out there, win one game at a time. No, we're not thinking about the next thing. Whatever it is, you can actually be a human, especially off the court. And I think he's done a great service to that. I mean, there's him. I mean, who else? Is there anybody else out there in the sports world who's an active, at their peak, having this type of dialogue and speaking to people in such an honest, or what their real feelings are? Is there anybody else out there doing this for their sport?
In the sports world, I don't know, because I don't follow. I'm pretty sure the NFL has some guys. Every now and then I see somebody in the NFL pop up on my thread, but I'm not sure if there is another KD out there that will just, like, if you took his profile picture and name and swapped it out for your common NBA Twitter responder, you just wouldn't notice. I don't know if we have, and at his level, I don't know if there's another one out there, honestly.
Right. Because there's a lot of people, and this is what you get. You get a lot of people in the second wave, like, what's his name? Ja Morant, Trae Young, Lonzo Ball, even in the beginning. Lonzo, yeah, in the very early days, like, they'd come on there after a good game and say something like, "Oh, you guys said I couldn't do it," you know, some weird gripe stuff with the world. And then, or later on, they'll put up a big game and they'll be like, you know, I'm taking apologies now, or whatever it is, or pull up some old tweet from somebody. I feel like those people don't get what Kevin Durant was doing. It's not just that stuff is too cliche. It's too still by the script. You know, you're against me and now I can do it. I showed you I can do it. It's different than that. But I feel like we're getting more people who are airing their grievances out early. And I don't think it's working for everybody. I don't think it's a good idea. Remember when Kevin Durant can back it all up. He has the career and he has a legacy, so he can be a little whiny if he wants to be. And we are also forced to deal with him because he's relevant in the league and in the game. So we do have to take the things he says to some degree seriously. You know, if he wants to say something about the locker room in the Nets, or say something sly about Steve Nash, like, it matters. It matters. So I really do. I feel for the next wave or generation of basketball interactions with the public, he did a lot. You know, he'll be one of those people, one of those pioneers. You know, it's like he'll be on a shirt at one point. You know, we'll sing a song about him, or I don't know. So, it's like social civil rights. You know, the right for him to be himself in public, as opposed to something else. So
on the topic of players actually being themselves and being a little bit human, we saw James Harden this week be a little bit human and just say, fuck it, I am the MVP right now. It's the thing he said. Probably if it was a response to the question or whatever it was in an interview, he said it. And I feel like you were just saying with LeBron and the Utah slander, let's just call it what it was, on live TV. We got to see a little bit of LeBron. Every now and then we do get to see like a little bit of the human player, like back in 2014 when Kevin Durant said, I think that's what he said, he was the best player in the world and he was tired of coming second or whatever. Like, it didn't feel as much scripted back then because players aren't supposed to say those things about themselves traditionally.
Wait, who said that?
Was Kevin Durant. Yeah. Like, every now and then that was, I don't know, I guess that was a little bit of the early version of what we see now coming out. That was a 2014 version, and now we're in 2021, and he's just, completely evolved. But back then, we saw him get that bit out. And we see players, I'm trying to think of more examples as I'm talking about. We see this every now and then. It's just like a little slip and then they go back to normal for a while and you don't hear anything. But how do you feel about players singing their own praises? Because to many people's disagreement, you absolutely hated older players having to tell their war stories, basically like Dr. J in their own documentaries. But every now and then with like how Kevin Durant is leading the conversation on being able to just be like, fuck it. Hey, I was just a regular kid before I was an NBA player. I'm going to continue to be that, well, I don't want to say kid, but that person at least. And now you will have every now and then a LeBron James back in 2015 say I'm the best player in the world. Then later on, say 2016 made him the GOAT. You'll have these things. You'll finally hear a little bit of what they actually think, which kills me. I always want that. I always support these things. I hate having to wait until years later in a book to find out what they really thought when their coach said this to them. Or, well, I understand why they don't say shit about their coaches, but you get the point here. How do you feel about that then, with players singing their own praises? Because James Harden gave us a great tidbit this week.
The whole idea of waiting 20 years to hear it in a book. For a while, I guess I subscribe to that. That's what I would say I would prefer. But there's a separation there. I think that is in more of in the cases of the behind the scenes story, the little legendary interactions that somebody may have, or the type of off court or contribution that they had that we didn't see on the court. I feel like that's the kind of stuff it's nice to see later on and like feel like you're let in on that.
Yeah.
The players thinking that they are the best at something, it's so weird. It's this ugly little human trait that we have where, and I saw it with the TNT guys when they're talking about Draymond's saying he's the best defender ever, almost to a man. And who was there? Candace, what's her name?
Candace Parker. Yeah,
she's great. She's very grounded. Like, and I appreciate that, because sometimes they just drift off into irrelevancy. But the idea that every single person can and should say they're the best. Everybody who's a competitor, everybody who's been around the NBA or basketball or any professional sport understands that it is completely in the lines and valid for an individual to say or believe they're the best. But then we have to just take a step back and assess, are they the best? Are they really the best, right? I mean, the fact that now we are having the debate about LeBron James, or about Draymond Green, and the fact that we can even maintain the debate and we're all not just laughing our asses off, that was some great marketing by him. That was a great way to push that narrative forward. He put the words out there. And when somebody spoke them, you can't erase them. They are floating out there, and either he'll live up to it and people will deem him that, or he'll fail utterly. And then at this point, I don't think he can. I think he has enough of a legacy in order for people to make some sort of an argument on that end of it. James Harden, he's got a lot. I feel like he's got a lot to still lay out there on the court. Anybody? Okay, John, what do you think? He seems to be doing what he does every season until the playoffs. I mean, he's doing the same exact thing. But I don't know why people seem surprised. Obviously, there's a balance, and he's got different personalities to deal with, and he seems like he really was went in there trying to work with the team and be part of the team and do whatever they needed. And he's the real point guard. But how is this any more amazing than what he was doing in Houston? And why can't we just say, all right, we'll see if he gets over the final hump that he hasn't been able to get to yet?
I would say where we are this season, going to the Nets, he's answered questions which I felt like were weird questions anyways, but everyone who was involved in a James Harden trade was like, oh well, they watched him play one way in Houston and they were like, we don't need that here. And I thought it was fairly obvious that it wasn't going to be exactly like Houston, because that's a very specific system, it's a very specific coach, and he didn't want to be there anymore. So clearly on some level he didn't want to just pound the ball under his legs 30 times before either throwing a lob to Capella or kicking it to an open shooter or laying it up. Clearly he wanted something else that could actually win. So you go to the Nets and he has adapted well. He's I'm not sure if he's leading the league in assists right now, but he's adapted very well when people didn't actually know if he could. He's playing as a part of a big three that is often either just a big two with him and Kyrie, or it's just him sometimes. Kyrie had a little birthday bash, I guess, this week. By the way, I love Kyrie, so that probably sounded like shade. It's not shade, but it happens. Kyrie does what he wants. He understands on this franchise he can do what he wants, so he's here sometimes and sometimes he's not. So now you find Harden on this situation where people were already questioning, even when Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and when those three are on the floor, guys were like, oh, is this team good enough to win a championship? Are they good enough on the defensive side? And so without even having them on the floor together, like rarely ever, James Harden has adapted well. He's playing great basketball and they're winning. That's happening right now. So they're probably a couple of games out of the first seed, I would say. I think he's answered questions that people had mid-season, or upon this trade, and I think that he's you're asking like, how is it different, basically, because that is the question that's starting to come up, is people are starting to say, oh, because I just saw we hit that point this week where guys were like, James Harden, because that's exactly when it happened, was when he said I'm the MVP, and then of course people start saying, let's be real, he's the best player in the league right now. That happens every year, and people were like, oh yep, here we are, we're at this point in the season with James Harden. I guess it's that, just for the reasons I said, I think that's why it seems a little bit different now, and it also seems like it really should go all the way, because in the past, I think with Harden's dominance, especially because of the situation he's been in the Western Conference, rarely do you ever look at it and say, this should end in a James Harden championship. So in 2018, I think, was when he won the when he won the MVP. I don't think anybody really expected them to beat Golden State. That was 18, right? That was 18, yeah. It was the second year. I don't think anybody actually expected them to beat Golden State that year. Last year, him and Westbrook, they went to micro ball. It was a wild card. I was very interested to see how it worked out, but I didn't for a second believe that this is going to result in a James Harden championship. They're not eliminating LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I don't think that's where this is going. So you get to this season, and I just went through the whole thing about the questions, and again, also it's with Kyrie Irving, I think, because when him and Kevin Durant on the floor together, when James Harden and Kevin Durant on the floor together, there's no problems. You almost look at that and go, man, this could work by itself as a duo. This could probably go all the way by itself as a duo. They wouldn't even need Kyrie. That's where the real questions come, that's where they were anyways when they got together. People were like, oh, can Harden and Kyrie actually do this together? Because Kyrie's most prolific talent is scoring, but he's not bringing like MVP defense or anything with that. In James Harden, you look at him and you think scoring as well, but you think some playmaking. So they had to make that mesh, and they've made that mesh. So I think that's where it's a little bit different. And I think looking at Brooklyn, obviously, especially with the new acquisitions where they only needed a couple of things, they've got this kid, Nick Claxton, who I think has answered some questions for them, who's basically he was a backup center. At this rate, he might end up starting for them. It should go all the way. I still see some people saying Milwaukee is my favorite, or Philly. But the Nets now, if they lose, there we go. James Harden has not been in a position of, oh, it's like win or bust this year. Has that been a position for Harden yet? I don't think that's been a position for him. When they lost to San Antonio and Ginobili blocked them, they weren't supposed to beat San Antonio that year. And we're supposed to go to the finals. That was 2017 when Westbrook won. And we're supposed to go to the finals that year. I guess even in 2018 where they won 60 something games with Chris Paul, still, it was well understood. This is Golden State's shit. This is their conference still. Then 19, I don't forgot what happened in 19. I can't remember it all. Oh yeah, there we go. That's the only time I believe when Kevin Durant got hurt. in your guys' 2019 series against Houston. I think that's the only time where I said midway through, I was like, okay, now Houston, not that they should absolutely just, you know, they have to win this, but I thought they had more of an advantage at that point because Chris Paul had been back healthy. Guys were like, oh, if Chris Paul wasn't hurt last year, we would have won. But either way, point still stands. It rarely ever is like this where James Harden, if he doesn't win this year, even if they get to the finals and they lose, it would just be such a massive disappointment. That's why I think those are some of the differences I see. Long story, long answer.
If they got to the finals and lost, personally, I wouldn't hold it against them too much. I think every team's first year, especially since this wasn't even a preseason thing, this has been cobbled together during this weird ass season. I think if they couldn't get it together this season, I wouldn't look at them any differently. I wouldn't judge them for that. It depends on how they failed. If everybody fails the same way they usually do it towards the end of these games and just kind of gives it up. I mean, that team is like so familiar with blowing it towards the end of games. Like even with Blake Griffin and his years with the Clippers, like they just not being able to get over the hump. The only person there, I mean, I guess it's Kevin Durant, but it's like he got that artificial kind of boost with the Warriors. He went to finishing school and figured out how to finish, but I don't know if it's finishing when you're usually up 20, you don't have a lot of close games. I mean, we look back at that 3-point shot he hit in 2018 over LeBron.
17 and 18. Yeah, both of them.
Okay. But these series one was a sweep. The other was a gentleman's sweep. Like we don't really address that too much. These series this wasn't even a contest. So Kevin Durant, he's one of those people that is just towards the end of these things, just kind of blows it usually. Unless obviously you're sweeping the team, but in close games, who turns it on and does something that they haven't really done before or haven't done something that they're not really known for?
I'd go Kyrie Irving since he has the 2016 behind him. I trust Kyrie. If there's anyone I trust Kyrie.
Which leads me to this question: which player, if the Nets had to do this, which I feel like they basically do this to some degree, as many minutes as James Harden was playing, at least a few games I've seen, plays with the second unit. Who would be a better sixth man in an ideal scenario? Kyrie Irving or James Harden?
So we're not even putting Kevin Durant in this question. Just Kyrie and Harden.
No, because it's like the microwave test, right? Remember Vinny the microwave? I feel like I see old clips of him. I personally have never seen him play, but he was with the Pistons, right? That was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Came on, just scored a bunch. I think that's what a sixth man is. So Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving is that kind of guy that could come in on his own, just go all out, keep a team in it, score a few extra points, whatever it is, not get down. James Harden was a sixth man, and there's clips of him talking about how he was content to stay in Oklahoma and be a sixth man if that's how they would have played that out. It's like the sixth man mentality. He still has it a little bit, but Kyrie Irving, I know it'd be a bitch to get him off the bench, but he almost is the perfect sixth man archetype. If you could just build one, somebody who can come in, get 10 buckets if they at off peak hours. That's it. That's your sixth man. I've talked myself into it. If I could have the perfect sixth man, it would be Kyrie Irving. But I don't think it's possible. Yeah,
and that's super artificial scenario and some wild universe. If I had to choose between those, yeah, obviously I would go Kyrie because Harden, I know I'm gonna get more with him on the starting lineup, so I could get Kyrie to come in and just blow somebody up for 25 straight. If we had to do it in this backwards universe, absolutely.
It's not. You mean the logical universe? The universe where winning basketball games is the goal. Like that's
right.
That's the world I'm talking about. Maybe it is an alternate world. People say they care about winning. But
yeah.
No,
while we're there, because that got me thinking about Kyrie and his talents. What exactly? This is off the cuff. This was not on there. What exactly is a superstar player? Since we're on this topic of ego and everything, because It gets used a lot. It gets thrown around a lot where, you know, people are having arguments and they're like, oh, this player didn't have another superstar player next to him or whatever. And I've talked to people who actually play in the league, and they're like, yo, in this league, if you can score, I don't give a damn what anybody says. If you can score, you are one of the most valuable players, period. But it often breaks down to this thing of, could this player lead this team to a championship? Can they do a million other things? But when you can score like a player like Kyrie does, and when you can be as skilled as he is and as crafty as he is, offense is obviously, we always say defense wins championships, but there's no doubt we cater to offense in this league. That's what pays the most. That's what teams go after. They accumulate offensive talent, and then you try to get defense second. Like, that's what happens. That's literally what the Nets have done. They went and got 3 superstar offensive players, and then they're like, okay, we'll figure the rest out. We'll let the rest of it figure itself out. So, but what exactly is a superstar player then? Is it somebody who can just on any given night in this professional league go get you 30? Or does it have to be more behind it? Do they have to be the type of player that you could put on a team and can say, go get me a championship at some point, you know, during your tenure here? What exactly is that in that ingredient?
How long was Blake Griffin a superstar in your mind?
And this is a hilarious question, because if you threw this out there, I guarantee you would get responses of, oh, he was a superstar. When was Blake a superstar? I'm like, I remember Blake Griffin explicitly. I don't know if it was 2013 or 2014. It was a stint where Chris Paul was out, and Blake held the Clippers together. And he was actually, for that short time, he was in the MVP race. So I'm like, are you going to tell? Yes.
Remember that?
Yes, he was former MVP contender Blake Griffin. So you're going to tell me for that little stint there that he was not playing superstar basketball? And if he checks off the boxes of being able to carry this offense and even give you some of the qualities of a superstar, right? Because let's be real, it's not all just basketball. I think we used to get into this when Kawhi Leonard was becoming a superstar. We started talking about like marketability and everything and what they actually do and how they go about what they do. Because that was the thing people don't remember. Kawhi was not always referred to as a superstar. That took time. It took time for that to build up. But anyways, to answer your question, like Blake, if we are going to paint Blake as ever having been a superstar, it wasn't for very long, I would say, because he got hurt just routinely. It's like clockwork, basically. You're probably looking around anywhere from like the 14 and 15 season, around that era. It's somewhere in the 13 to 15 season, I would say. Somewhere in there, I think you can find yourself a superstar version of Blake.
The other question is basic. This is right along with any Twitter debate. How many superstars do you think there are in the league? I'm not asking you to name them, but just how many do you think there are? And then how many do you think there can be at one given moment?
Off the top of my head, if you just go how many superstars are there, you're probably going to land in the neighborhood of around 8 players, I would say. Give or take. You're not going to get to double digits. But then, of course, if I start listing them out, it's going to be different. Because you go, and this is where, again, you get to that gray area. Because you get the obvious ones. Steph Curry, superstar. Braun, superstar. Harden, superstar. KD, superstar. Joel Embiid. You're going to say he's not a superstar or not? He was the fucking MVP leader this year. That's Embiid. Nikola Jokic has to be a superstar right now. He has to be. That's a superstar player. Maybe he's missing the marketability part, but, you know. Then people will start getting into the conversation of, oh, is Luka one? His team has been losing this year, and they're just now making it back up. But Luka is absolutely not a superstar is where you're going with that?
I guess I put more weight on the off-court or the non-basketball portions of it. A superstar is somebody that I can walk upstairs and ask my wife if she knows them.
There we go, the marketability part of it. Okay.
It's not just it's marketability, but it's just how much have they permeated the society? Like, you know, it's like the coronavirus, right? Like if you're in the room with somebody, how long does it take for that little virus to get all the way to the corner where you're sitting? You're, you know, like how many people away? You need to be in the room for how long to be there? But certain rooms you walk in and it's there and you know it. That was a bad example. The point is that some way or another, whether it's through their wives, because, you know, a lot of the Steph Curry stuff that my wife knows about is through Aisha. She, you know, she follows her. She knows more about Dwayne Wade now than ever. And who's the other one that she was very surprised? I was very surprised she knew about. but it's through their wife who's doing something. I mean, this sounds very stereotypical, but the idea is my wife's not into basketball that much. She'll watch some games if I'm watching it, but the 5 players she can name are going to be unarguable superstars, and that's basically it. And Jokic and Luka, like, these people are not superstars. I mean, we're using the word star. We're pulling out of Hollywood speak, movie star. We're not saying great basketball players or effective team leaders. We're saying superstars, and that's something else. That means that you have broken through into a higher plane of the culture, where it's like everybody has heard of you for some reason or another. And we're opening that up way too fast for other people who have no business being there in the superstar category. To be honest, you start saying, like, okay, I know they're superstars, but even I feel like there's really 3. That's it. Maybe 3 superstars.
Hey, but some people would a lot of people would probably, because again, a lot of the numbers that I see are very conservative numbers. When you start asking this, people are like, they can only be this amount, and it's normally a tiny number.
I don't think Embiid's a superstar.
Okay, you don't have Embiid there. So does a
superstar?
Do you think you could go around? Would your wife know Kawhi Leonard?
Barely.
So Kawhi's not a superstar then for you.
He's the one who's on the line for me.
Okay, so yeah, you put like you're like 70% marketability outside society type things then.
Okay, is one championship and one league MVP, does that make you a superstar? Like it happened 3 years ago.
I mean, there's a lot of context. I think there's a lot of context that goes with it.
I guess maybe it's also in comparison to the ceiling, right? You can't have a ceiling where it's 4 or 5 championships and 4 league MVPs and complete name recognition across the country or the world. If that's the ceiling, like a LeBron James for recognizing and marketability or just awareness, it kind of pulls everything up with it. I feel like that if he's what a superstar is, he can't be the anomaly. That's got to be people closer to him are superstars, and not people who have never even sniffed a ring, or people who are just now making their way through the playoffs and just figuring out how to be successful, like Joel Embiid. Good God, please stop calling him a superstar. He's not a superstar. He's a really good basketball player who may actually have some sort of accolades this year. Probably not anymore. He's not going to win it this year. He's going to be.
Well, okay, I guess because on some level I do get the argument you're making, absolutely, with the society thing. Because if you've done enough on the court that everyone that you name is just a hit with anybody, then yeah, you're obviously. So I get what you're saying from there. And again, a part of what you're referencing here is longevity, I guess you would say, because a lot of people say, oh, 1 or 2 good seasons doesn't make you a superstar. I see that a lot as well. But then you have, so you're not putting Embiid as a superstar.
I've talked myself out of it in this very conversation. For this is not a long-standing opinion. I just developed this opinion.
And there we go. That's where you'll get these differing opinions, because you'll have, Embiid would have probably won MVP this year if he hadn't have gotten hurt. And he was doing it on both sides of the floor as well. It's another thing that people throw in there is they say, oh, this guy is all offense, but he's not giving you, anything else. So he can't be a superstar. If he averaged 30, but he's giving up this many points, that can't be a superstar. And Embiid was doing it on both sides, all on the way to an MVP. But again, always hurt before this. Maybe it's not
a lot of ifs there.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you don't get a concrete answer when you go into the superstar conversation at all. Because there's a lot of different factors to it, a lot of different context.
Maybe we can give them that. That's all they need. Somebody to develop the words or the arguments or the framework for what a thing is, It's
right.
All-Stars. All-Star is so funny because, they got the team and then somebody always gets injured, right? And then there's an all-star replacement. And then we don't call them an all-star replacement forever. Like, we just say they were an all-star, right?
Yeah.
They just get that title. So we're real loose with that. And then
I will never let anybody forget that Kyle Korver was an all-star replacement, but continue. I'll never let anybody forget that. Oh, that's 2015
So when you
Hawks.
see him in the store and he comes up to you and he's telling somebody he played in the NBA, well, you're gonna shoot him down.
Yeah, no,
You're gonna
it's
get
just
back to reality.
Just you're not gonna oversell the 2015 Hawks by saying they had this all-star. How many ever all-stars they had? Kyle Korver made it because Wade was hurt. He was not an all-star player. Korver was not an all-star player. But he was good though. We love Kyle Korver. We love our sharpshooters.
Wait, where was Dwayne Wade at that point? Was he on his way?
That was 2015, so Dwayne Wade was still in Miami, and I believe he just had some type of injury that year.
Okay.
Yeah, he was definitely still in Miami. Yeah.
That was was that a ceremonial all-star bid? Like
No. 2015 the Heat would have actually challenged the Cavs if Chris Bosh hadn't had that random issue that ended his career actually. But other than that, Hassan Whiteside was coming onto the scene, and I think that's when they acquired Dragic. Yeah, they were getting ready to go on a run, and then boop.
Yeah.
Blink of an eye, all gone. That's pretty much what happened there.
So, what I'm saying is that I think there's a way to frame what a superstar is. I don't know what the words are yet, but I think it's within our power to give people that, just to gift them that. But I don't think you really can have more than like 3. I think that's it. Because what's above, unless we have another label for the thing that's above that, is there something above superstar?
I mean, we have superstar players, and then if we're lucky enough in our generations, we have GOAT candidates, obviously. So like Michael Jordan was a superstar playing with other superstars, but he was obviously building his GOAT candidacy as well. So I guess that might be the thing that's above that.
Okay. I guess maybe that's a tough one because it's like it's pretty recent than anything else. Just laying so heavy on that discussion of who the GOAT is. The other part is, I don't know if that. I think that's GOAT is very basketball centric based. It's performance based, right? I think you kind of strip away some of the celebrity aspect of it when you're talking about the GOAT. So it kind of it's something of its own. I'm not saying it's less than. Obviously, we're just trying to determine who the best player is. When you say a superstar, it's so much different than that. So I don't know. I think superstar is the biggest you can be. Obviously, in terms of GOAT conversation, we really should be only addressing 1 or 2 people at any given moment. Like it's not really a long list of people. There's no yearly player that's the GOAT for this year. I mean, and then we need to continue talking about them in that year forever. They just kind of fade away into whether they were a star or not. But superstar, it's something different, and I think that I'm gonna always cap my discussions at 3 people. That's all you can get. That's it. There's only 3 superstars in the league at any given point. Part of me doesn't want to include people like James Harden. I don't think he's a superstar. Can you be a superstar and not ever win it all?
Can you be you can be a superstar and not have, definitely. Because that would eliminate tons and tons of players.
Well, that's what I'm looking to do. I'm trying to eliminate tons of players. All right, we can move on from this. But
before we move on, who are the 3 superstars today? Then before we'll leave it at that for this.
And it's not even about this how they're playing right or their team. It's LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. That's it.
All right.
Those are your superstars. And there really might only be 2 superstars.
Well, yeah, my list definitely goes. We'll definitely have to revisit this one because we're there's some distance between us there, okay, and the number, okay, and the number.
I mean, who's 4? Who's the 4th automatically?
Oh well, easily, we can. You can end it right there and go like James Harden. Yeah, he's definitely my superstar category, absolutely. But I do get a player like. I don't feel like I can ask many people on the street who Nikola Jokic is, and they would know. So I get that aspect of it, but I'm sympathetic to that because I remember a time where it would have been like that for Kawhi Leonard as well. Hell, for some people it still might be like that, but I've watched Kawhi have one of the greatest playoff runs ever with my own eyes, so I have to have him there. And then this season as well, he's still, he doesn't bring any of the flair, and you're never going to be able to go up to some elderly woman and ask her like, hey, you know Kawhi? Like, like why?
Right.
She'll be like, why? Like, what? Yeah, see, no, it's not gonna happen.
You never mentioned Giannis in any of this.
Oh shit, yeah, you're right. Giannis, yes, absolutely. No, yes, Giannis has his flaws too. Giannis has his easily exploitable flaws. He is one of the more confusing superstars, but nonetheless, yes, Giannis has to be there. Just for the disclaimer, I forgot names. That's not me discrediting your favorite player, whoever that might be. Doing this off the cuff. So yeah, obviously I have guys like Giannis up there. But yeah, the fact that people, I don't think there's anybody, well, you obviously didn't put him in your list, but normally when you have these conversations, people aren't going, oh, Giannis can't shoot and that's easily exploitable. Boom, he's not a superstar. You don't see a lot of people saying that because he makes up for it in many other places. Very flawed, very obviously so far difficult to have him be your best player on a title team, but superstar nonetheless. The guy might three-peat this year in MVPs. There's no way in the hell I cannot have him on the superstar list. And he might win 3 straight. That list is Larry Bird and who else? Like 1 or 2 other people with 3 straight.
Oh yeah, I saw Larry,
yeah.
It's amazing. I hope, and if he does it, gosh, I hope he doesn't get ripped apart for not winning a championship or something.
Oh, you know he will. Yeah, he will. Go ahead and prepare for that. Like, yeah, if he gets 3 straight but doesn't win, like you can go ahead and that's the next thing people are going to devalue. First, it was triple doubles because once Westbrook did that, it was no longer amazing anymore. And if Giannis 3-peats on MVPs and then goes out in the second round.
I mean, I know that's a shame. I do feel it. I feel how MVPs are being watered down, or just
absolutely. Like you can already see some people saying that they don't matter, or they're a narrative award, or they're this. Like, yeah, MVPs are definitely next on that list. It's like triple doubles and MVPs and whatever else is below that. It's just a list being like crossed off. Soon enough, nothing will matter. Except,
and then that's the day when somebody like Damian Lillard could be a 6th man. we're working our own future here.
One more thing to wrap it up, just because this was definitely a part of last week's podcast that preceded the week. What did you make of, and this goal was great because somebody had asked you a question about this a while ago, and we mentioned it here with the players singing their own praise. Draymond Green saying that he was the greatest defender of all time, then Tony Allen coming in and checking him. Basically, I had to send you that thread because we talked about it literally the day before it happened, and Tony Allen is like, who gave you your stripes or cards or something? I can't remember. Yeah, stamps, but stamps. There you go, stamps. That's awesome. Yeah,
check marks.
Yeah, and they kind of went back and forth at it. Then Draymond Green pulled out the exact thing we discussed. He pulled out the "we ignored you" in the 2015 playoff series, and that's why you guys lost, because you were winning that series. You were up 2-1 and completely defeating us, and then we were like, oh wait, they have a guy up there that plays professional basketball that we don't have to pay attention to at all, and we can win this, and we did it. And so that spat was hilarious. And so if you've got anything on that, it was great. I think it was great. Hard, like you said. Sorry, Draymond. He put it out into the universe, and everyone just kind of took it and did whatever they did with it. Everyone was having the debates. People were making lists of their greatest defenders. But I didn't, like you said, I didn't see anybody really just outright laughing at Draymond. They might have gave their reasons why they didn't think he was the greatest. And of course, I don't myself, I wouldn't have him as the greatest defender ever. But again, that's what he thinks, or at least that's what he wants people to think. I'm glad that he put it out there, and I'm glad that Tony Allen came through. Because, Tony Allen doesn't feel like you could tell him shit. Kobe said, like, I think that was his toughest defender. So, Tony Allen wears that forever. So, yeah, that's how we'll wrap this up. What do you have on that?
Well, that's that idea that Kobe said something about it and acknowledged it. Like, now he gets to hang his whole career on that.
Absolutely.
It's like whenever I talk about how John Stockton, doesn't have a left hand, or how he's overrated or something like that. I don't know. Everybody brings up the one interview where Gary Payton said, oh, he's the best point guard I ever played against, or whatever. They bring up this one soundbite that some guy said, either politely or not politely. Like, just they said it, so that's the comeback, but he said it. So Tony, but it's great because it's Kobe. Like, if Kobe says it, I don't think a lot of people are going to argue about that. It kind of just goes into the basketball Bible. If Kobe said it now at this point, you just accept it. But with the funniest part about the Draymond clip where he calls himself the best defender ever, it's great because he pauses before he says it. Like, he says something like, I'm, one of the best defenders. Then he has like a pause, and he's saying it to himself almost. He's like, I'm the best defender of all time or something like
I
that.
haven't seen this. I only read it.
I
So.
saw it once, and I was waiting to hear him say it in some rant where he just seemed really confident. But there was this little beat before he said it, like he was working his way into it, or like saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna go ahead and say this right now." And you saw little wheels, little cogs spinning, where it's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna put this out there, and they're gonna deal with it. People are gonna take this." So he said it, and exactly that happened because it was very offhand, just flip it, add on to his answer, whatever the question they asked him. But what it is exposing is the, well, then who is it part of all this? Because watching Shaq try to come up with the best defenders when he's like, no, he's not, and he starts just freezing to just think, okay, well then who is it? You know, and then eventually people come up with KG, or let's say Bill Russell or something like that. But it's not like with the offensive side or scoring or any of the other lists that we have for best of all time. The best defenders of all time is not this ready-made list that's just already out there and been compiled 1,000 times a day on Twitter. Because we're just repeating the same argument points. And there's a point where, like, if you bring up a topic, I'll go down a thread looking for the traditional argument beats. You know, somebody will say something, oh, Steph Curry, blah, 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 is greatest. And they'll be like, oh, he gave up 3-1. And then it'll be like, oh, well, he beat them. Oh, well, you know, he needed KD. Well, what about 2015? Like, oh, well, Kyrie and Kevin Love were hurt. And then it's just like the same script. But with defense and the greatest defenders of all time, it's not ready-made for us. So it's catching people off guard on TV and off TV. And then I see people accepting the fact that, well, he may be one of the better ones of all time. You know, it's like an acceptance of an argument that he forced upon us. So I appreciate it. I think it's great. I love that he did that. And it's weird because that works for him. But then when you have somebody like Paul Pierce try to brag about his own career at any given moment, people laugh at him. They literally laugh at him. When he was trying to say he was better, he had a better career than Dwayne Wade and Jalen Rose on set, just like bullet point by bullet point with pie charts, dismantled the man's argument as he sat there. He just sat there. Paul Pierce just taking it. Whenever he tries to talk about how good he is, that's when I realized the treacherous nature of being your own PR, your own hype voice. You cannot do that. You don't do it. Paul Pierce would have lived in a higher plane and a more respectable space in our basketball brains if he just would have shut up for a few years after he left. He has not stopped talking, and he gets into beef with people who are still playing, like Draymond, and it's like, you're killing your own legacy, man. Paul Pierce is systematically stripping layers of skin off of his legacy. And every once in a while, I got to actually go remind myself how good he was. He doesn't have disciples. He doesn't have champions. He doesn't have Horace Grant making an entire post-basketball career out of doing interviews about you. That's what he does for Michael Jordan. He goes anywhere. Maybe he's mad because, you know, he was the guy who was the source for the Jordan rules or whatever it is, but that's pretty settled, right? That's the case. He was the guy. He was one of the guys. Remember?
Go elaborate.
There was somebody with the Bulls who was providing a lot of the behind the scenes.
There you go. That was Grant. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But you have these people, and I always wondered whether LeBron James was going to have enough disciples, people to go out there and say how great of a guy and motivational he was behind the scenes or in the locker room. And I always thought, I don't know, there's something about him, and just obviously the nature of him leaving cities and going to other teams, not really letting those roots take a hold, that he doesn't have enough people who are going to just organically push his legacy and share the stories that may or may not be true, you know, the myths. But he's got a whole company behind that now, and I know they've always been behind that, but he could use, you know, you've got somebody like when Kevin Love a year ago, I think it was a year or so ago, he starts talking about what LeBron James was saying on the bus in 2016.
Yeah, I remember that story.
You know, yeah, and Kevin Love was like, wow, like, this guy really said this, and then we did it. That's what, there's so many people out there that do that for Jordan. I mean, Reggie Miller, half of his career is about telling Jordan stories. And LeBron needs more of those. He needs more of those types of things in order to really solidify himself as a greatest of all time at some point, may or may not. Draymond doing it while he's still playing and saying that, I feel like there's something about it while you're still playing. And that goes back to people saying, you know, Kevin Durant saying he was the greatest player, or even LeBron James saying it in 15 different ways over his, you know, his 30 years in the NBA that he's the best player. There's a part of it where you still got to go back it up, which I appreciate. So I think you can talk that trash, you can say all that stuff while you're still playing, and I think it's fine to hype your own legacy up or your own career up if you're still doing it, because it almost shows that I want the pressure. But once you retire, you got to shut up. You have to go away for 2 to 3 years. You have to set up a whole system of players that you were good with and weren't good with, and they go out and they, you know, blitz the media over the next couple of years. I mean, they do that with presidents. Like, there was the Ronald Reagan Legacy Project, and they got airports named after him, schools, all this stuff. None of it was organic. When he was out of office, they said, we're going to make this man the Republican Jesus right now. These guys, he is going to be it. And they built it. None of it was organic. That's what you have to do. You have to manufacture your own stronghold on a legacy. And you can't be the one running out there talking. You can't be out there. You can't. It's stupid. And that's the thing. Either whether you're right or wrong, you know, you have a good, strong enough team to kind of plant those pillars around society. This guy was the best. I think for defense, we're gonna get, now that it's an open discussion, I think he'll be able to sink his teeth into that claim over time, more and more. The fact that he jumpstarted that conversation, he's forever attached to it. So it's all positive. Good for him.
Yeah, it could be positive for him, could be negative, because on the flip side, every time he makes a defensive mistake now or gets crossed like he did by Christian Wood, or, you know, anything like that happens, and I can already see it coming. We're like, oh, this guy is the greatest defender, even if that doesn't, losing your balance and getting crossed doesn't exclude you from that conversation. That's just gonna happen. Or if he gets dunked on, it's gonna come through every time. But he put it out there, and that's gonna be interesting to see how it goes for Draymond Green, because he is a great TV personality. Last offseason, when they had him, when they weren't in the playoffs and they weren't in the bubble, and they had him discussing basketball, I feel like maybe he won't have to sing his own praises. Maybe he'll have people that he played against, give him some merit there. But I think that where it would differ for him and Pierce is maybe Pierce could do it if he also broke down the game in an intelligent way. So Draymond Green is really, really good at that part. And he's somebody that anybody who actually watches basketball will want to listen to. He's somebody I look forward to after retirement. So if he slips that in there, upon some exit, because that's a difference, you can display your brilliance afterwards, because he's defensively brilliant. He's been defensively brilliant throughout his career, and it goes through, and when he's breaking down games after his career, you're going to see that shine through even more. I think that's probably the hope there. But yeah, hey, look, it's open house with me, honestly, with players and what they think. I like these little quotes. I like these tidbits. It gets people talking. That's why I like what Kevin Durant does. I'm a new fan of KD's Twitter interactions, because I really realize, like you said, for you, that's one of your only 2 to 3 superstars in the league. And I thought about that today. I'm like, yeah, we really have one of maybe the greatest scorer ever, but easily one of the greatest players ever on Twitter, basically just telling people, yeah, I'm trolling you, and you can't do anything about it, and you're gonna feed into it, and it's gonna be hilarious, and it's gonna be screenshotted, and he's just, he's mastered that part. So I like when players do this. Hopefully we get it more, and we will have more of this podcast next week, because we are done before midnight. Yeah, we're at an hour and a half here. We made good timing. If there's anything else you want to say to close it out, you can, but otherwise, this show is on Spotify. It is on iTunes. Link in the comment section and description. And we will see you all next week. I didn't give you a chance to wrap it up if you had anything.
Yeah, I got two things to say real quick.
Yeah,
It's close. You mentioned before about you were changing what was it? From what to what for your podcast?
We're just a part
networks.
of a network. Yeah, just part of a network now. Yeah, Blue Wire.
You're clearly, you stay in shape, right?
Yeah, I try.
You still play ball occasionally?
Occasionally, of course. With the pandemic, I didn't play much, but I'll be out there in my retirement form, my cardiovascular retirement form when everything opens up in another couple of months.
Well, I just went out this past week. I got and actually played some ball. I haven't played in a while, like competitive. I realized like I haven't lost much. You know, my win. I was a little tired. I was exhausted after a couple of runs, but my game, which is very specific, I do 4 things and I don't miss. It's feeling like I just, you know, if there's another podcasting duo out there, when all this is over, you know, as long as you're not complete trash on the court, Dom, I'd love to challenge any pair in real life.
All right.
It was on. I realized I still have it. I still got it.
All right then. So, yeah. Hey, we can make that happen. He's officially put the challenge out there. Like LeBron once upon a time put his name in the dunk contest. He has put us in the podcasting duo pairing of 2-on-2 to an unspecified score. I'll be there. I need to start getting in cardiovascular shape for that tomorrow.
All right, good. Your motivation, yeah. When somebody comes at you here,
awesome.
Somebody will say something.
Oh yeah, it'll happen eventually. All right, well, be on the lookout for that. That won't be a podcast that you can find on Spotify and iTunes. Yeah, maybe you'll find that on YouTube. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah.